Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And the first thing I want to say right off the bat is, if you think to yourself, now wait a minute, if you go to the United States Senate, why won't it change you the same way it seems to change other people? My answer to that is, if I went to Harvard Law School and Harvard Divinity School and didn't drink the Kool-Aid, believe me, I can go to the United States Senate, I won't drink the Kool-Aid there either. I'll remain the same person that I know I'm supposed to be. I became a Republican in 1982 in Massachusetts. That was the equivalent of having leprosy. So I'm no recent convert for the purpose of some personal ambition. I became a Republican when it wasn't popular for anybody to be a Republican, and it certainly wasn't popular for a black man to become a Republican. But I stood up for what I believed in, and I joined the Republican Party because I believe that the principles of the Republican Party are the principles that I hold dear. And my task, as I see it, in running and hoping to be elected, is to make sure that the Republican Party stays true to those values. And I think all too often the reason why we're in the position we're in right now is that Republicans went to Congress and they forgot who we were supposed to be, and they didn't turn the people out because the people were disenchanted and discouraged, and now look what we got. But folks, I'm telling you, don't be discouraged, because there's an awakening in our country now. Republicans are standing up for the principles we hold dear. And if the leadership that we have in the Congress now doesn't do it, we're going to send new leadership, but we're going to continue this fight, and eventually we're going to have a Congress and a president that will hold true to the values that made the country great. We are not going to lose this battle. We're going to win. Now, I was in a room like this on the first Tuesday in November of 2008. Along with others who were there presumably to celebrate what victories we had, but we really kind of ended up mourning the tremendous loss we had. I remember walking out of that function hall with my head hung down thinking, oh God, what's going to happen now? Our country has made a big mistake, and now we're going to have to live with that mistake for the next 4 years. And sadly, everything I was concerned about is coming to pass. We are witnessing in breakneck speed the fundamental transformation of our country. We're fighting to reverse it, but they're doing everything that they can to see to it that what this president promised, that he would change this country fundamentally, indeed comes to pass. We have $4 trillion added to the budget, added to our deficit in only 2 years. $4 trillion in only 2 years. We have added 200,000 federal employees to our government. We have increased the size of the federal government by 25%. He has spent as much in his presidency as was spent, half as much as was spent in the whole history of the country up until then. And the amazing thing is that there seems to be no cessation. There seems to be no appreciation of the fact that we have spent ourselves to the brink of bankruptcy, to the brink of fiscal cataclysm, and they still want to spend more. It is an amazing thing to me. Imagine, ladies, you tell your husband, honey, we spent $10,000 last month. And he says, oh, okay. And you say, but the only problem is we only took in $6,000. And he says, well, I've got the solution to that. What is that? Let's cut the budget next month by $15.
Excuse me?
That's the equivalent of what they offered in that first $6 billion offer of a cut. Out of a $3.65 trillion budget, let's cut $6 billion. That's the equivalent of $15 out of $4,000 overspent on a $10,000 a month budget. It is insane, folks. It's insane. And we need to realize something. We are not dealing with budget issues. That's not what we're confronting. We are dealing with an attempt to fundamentally redefine who we are. That's what this is really all about. It is about a larger and larger and more encroaching and overbearing government. They never have any compunction about expanding government. Frankly, if it weren't for the Republicans that we sent in 2010, they'd still be trying trying to expand it. That's their nature. That's what they want to do. They have this idea that if you expand government larger and larger, you will make a more just society. You will, of course, in the meantime, of course, you make them far more powerful and give them far more control over the American people. But this is what they're trying to sell us. And we need to remember to go back to the fundamentals. That's one problem I have with the Republican leadership that we have now. They need to keep bringing Americans back to the fundamentals. This is not just about dollars and cents. This is about a fundamental battle over who we are as a country. Are we a nation of socialism, a nation of wealth redistribution? Are we a nation that seeks to use the government to try to decide who the winners and the losers will be? Or are we what the founding fathers envisioned, a nation of limited government, maximizing freedom for the American people so that each person gets to fulfill his or her dream with hard work and personal responsibility and the use of their God-given talents? Now, we've got two different visions that are being competed against here, and we've got to say to the American people, let's make sure that the vision that is fulfilled is the vision that our founding fathers had for us. That's how we became the greatest nation in the world. And if we don't follow that vision, we're going to end up on the dung heap of history as a once great nation. I'm not going to stand for it. I know you aren't either. Now, after that terrible event in November of 2008 that gave us the administration we had, my wife and I would talk about what was wrong in the country. She would say, well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And so the first thing I did was to form an organization called STAND, Staying True to America's National Destiny. We say Stand America for short, but it's about Americans standing up. I founded that organization on July 4th of 2009. And it has grown tremendously and had a tremendous impact in a very short time. Not because of me, but because the American people are incensed about what is going on. Everybody's looking for an opportunity to get involved. So people have been giving and supporting in ways that I didn't even imagine. That's how it was possible to pull together the Conservative Emergency Task Force Summit in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago. We had Michelle Bachmann there. We had Alan West there. We had Mike Pence there. We had we had Senator Rand Paul there. We had Louis Gohmert there. And more than I can begin to mention. We had conservative leaders from every stripe there, all coming together on this basis. We can't afford to be divided. Tea Party versus social conservatives versus national security conservatives. We've got to all come together. Our country is in trouble. This is an emergency. And what came out of that summit, which was a magnificent opportunity for us to come together, and people walked away feeling, yes, this is what we need. Out of that has now grown an effort to replicate that nationwide. We are already creating a local conservative emergency task force here in Virginia that's being headed up by Tea Party people and social conservatives. We're bringing together the pro-life, pro-family conservatives and the Tea Party conservatives to work together and cooperate. I mean, I've got Mark Lloyd on the one hand, who is the head of the Virginia Tea Party Federation. I've got Victoria Cobb on the other. I've worked with them both. She's the head of the Family Foundation. They are both interested in flipping the Senate so that Republicans take over the Senate, and they're not even talking. So we're bringing them together. Now we're seeking to do that all over the country because, folks, we've got about a year and a half to get this thing straight. 4 more years of what we've had is unacceptable. I mean, we've got to turn this thing around, and we've got to turn it around now. 4 more years of this administration, and we wouldn't even recognize this country, I don't believe. So losing is not an option. We have got to turn things around. So STAND was the first step in that effort, and I'm going to continue with that. I am not quitting that. I'm not walking away from that because I'm a candidate for the U.S. Senate. I'm going to continue to work on that. In fact, we just hired somebody to be the national coordinator to bring people together all across the country. A tremendous Tea Party leader, one of the founders of the Tea Party, is working with me on that so that we reach out across all lines to bring conservatives together, because that's what it's going to take to win. Well, of course, having done that, I had some friends say to me, you know, this Senate seat is coming up, you ought to consider that. My first thought was, you must be crazy. My wife is not interested in having us out there and having people criticizing us and taking the slings and arrows. I mean, we're getting enough as it is. I was at the Tea Party rally a couple of weeks ago and spoke, and somebody called my home phone. I don't even know how they got the number. Called my home phone with a very, very nasty message about me being used as a prop. So, you know, we've been getting it. My wife sometimes gets those calls, and she says, look, I mean, that's kind of about all I can take. But we talked about it and prayed about it, and my wife finally said, you know what, the country is at stake. It's too important to be fearful. Let's go. So my wife is away right now at a conference, a teacher's conference. She teaches in public schools in Newport News. But I'll tell you, I stand here with her blessing. That means a great deal to me, because without that, I don't think I could really go forward. I've been married for going on 41 years. 41 years. And then I learned who's ultimately in charge. You know, I like to say I make all the important decisions in my home. The only problem is there haven't been any important decisions for me to make for the last 41 years. So we decided that we were going to go forward with this campaign. I've got a fine team around me. Joanne Mercer's working with us, and we've got Isaac Dietrich is working as a general consultant, has worked with some wonderful people, and he's just been doing a tremendous job for me. We've still got a lot of organizing and putting together to do, obviously, but things are really coming together very nicely. And obviously, I would ask for your support. I would ask for you to consider me to be your next United States Senator from Virginia. Now let me distinguish why I think it's important that I win this race. First of all, this can't be a race about the past. It's got to be a race about the future. I'm going to run a positive campaign. I'm not going to be attacking anybody, because I don't think that's what we need. I think we need to focus on what our country needs right now. It's not about me building a career. Folks, I'm 59 years old. I've had a career in law. I've got a career in ministry. Believe me, I'm not looking for a career. But I believe our country's in trouble, and I believe we need people who are going to stand up and fight for the future that we know we want to hand down to our children and to our grandchildren. So it can't be about the past. It's got to be about the future. Number one, that's number one. Number two, it can't just be about the Tea Party. Tea Party is wonderful. It's been a tremendous help to our country, but the Tea Party can't do it alone. We need a candidate who can reach out to the Tea Party, and I've been a Tea Party activist, who can reach out to Republicans, traditional Republicans, and I've been active in the Republican Party for many, many years, who can reach out to social conservatives and national security conservatives. I'm already doing that. We need someone who can bring those things together, and we need someone who has the potential to expand the base of the Republican Party. Look, folks, the demographics of our country are changing, and we need to reach out to Black Americans. We need to reach out to Hispanic Americans. We need to reach out to others and tell them the conservative message is what you need if you want your life to be good in this country. You're not going to ever make progress with a message of government dependence and the society owes us something and we're victims. Folks, I grew up in a poor town called Chester, Pennsylvania, probably in the poorest part of that poor town. My dad was a welder for 33 years at Sunship Building and Dry Dock Company. He never once told me, son, you can't make it because of racism. You can't make it because the country's unjust. My father told me, son, you can do anything you want to do. It's up to you to make a life for yourself, and don't come to me with any excuses. That's the message that we need to take to those communities. So it's got to be somebody who can reach out across all these lines and begin to bring people together. And let me just assure you of something. I don't give a different message when I'm standing in front of a predominantly black church. I give the same message everywhere I go because I believe it's the truth. You know, somebody once said, I tell the truth because it's easier to remember. Well, I don't give one message to a predominantly white audience and another message to a predominantly black audience. I mean, the truth is the truth, and I think it is what's going to help bring people into our movement, into the conservative movement, and realize that's where they belong. The data shows, for example, that the black community, particularly the church community, is more conservative on average than the white community. How do you get the incongruity of conservative people voting for all these liberals? I mean, you've got, for example, the black community voting for Bobby Scott. Bobby Scott is opposing Congressman Randy Forbes' effort to pass a resolution to reaffirm our motto, "In God We Trust," and yet he'll go to churches and campaign there, and they will vote for him. I mean, it's got to stop. And frankly, I believe I'm someone who can take that message authentically into those communities. Now, that's part of it. But look, also, this is the first time in my life in following politics I've seen Americans angrier and more fearful than I've ever seen us before. I mean, I can feel it when I go places. People really believe, and I do too, that for the first time in our history, our country's freedom is at stake from within. That we are under siege, and that we've got to do something to turn the situation around. Well, that voice needs to be heard. And frankly, folks, I know a couple of the other candidates, don't know them all, know a couple of the other candidates, but I'll tell you one thing, I don't think anybody is angrier about this than I am. And frankly, I want to go to the United States Senate and shake things up. I'm not interested in business as usual or interested in being one of the good old boys. I don't think I'd fit anyway. I'm interested in representing the voters of Virginia to say, hey, we have had it, we've had enough, and we're not going to put up with any more. So I think I bring that voice to anything that I do, and I'll certainly bring that voice to the United States Senate. Obviously, we need to bring fiscal sanity back. I mean, this is crazy. This is... we're not talking about fiscal responsibility. We're beyond that. We're in the area of psychosis now, where we need psychiatrists up there talking to people. So obviously that is important. And then for Virginia particularly, one of the things that has angered me about this president is, you know, I heard one economist say that we probably already lost 30,000 jobs as a result of the energy policies of the Obama administration. We had 67 oil rigs drilling in the Gulf. We're now down to 7, I believe. And this president tells us, we're drilling more than we've ever drilled. And I was talking to somebody from Alaska the other day. They said, we ought to fly every politician up to Anwar and let them see what they think they're preserving. It is a barren wasteland, and we only need a small sliver of it in order to drill, but they won't let us do it. Well, Virginia's suffering, and the country is suffering as a result. Our coal industry, if this president has his way, will be shut down. He said as much, and I want to fight for energy. Look, I happen to believe that God put that coal there and put that oil there for a reason. And that it's idiotic not to go down there and get it. So I think we ought to go get that energy that we have. So, and obviously, I am running not only for those reasons, but I'm also running because I believe that the one hope I have, and believe me, I can't find any points of agreement with this president at all, but the one hope I had was that, well, maybe he'll bring us together. You know, maybe he'll be a force for sort of ending all of this racial nonsense. Boy, was I disappointed. I mean, instead he has made it worse. He and his minions have played the race card again and again and again. I mean, he even said to an author writing a book, well, I believe that the opposition to me is a subterranean racism. No, it's not a subterranean racism. It's above the surface disagreement with your crazy policies. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with race. You know, I keep saying to people, we are not concerned about the president being black. We are concerned about whether he's red, white, and blue. Yeah. That's what matters. We need a president. Let me say this, I am not a birther, But I started to bring my birth certificate because, I just thought how easy it is for me to show mine. They ought to take it with me. But what people don't understand is there's a deep issue underneath that, underlying it, and it is this. He has an outsider attitude toward our country. I mean, so that's what the apologies are all about. That's what we can't expect the world to sit by while we drive SUVs and while we eat what we want to eat. Well, why not? What's the world got to do with what I drive or what I eat? Come on. But he thinks that we're answerable to the world. I mean, interestingly, when he goes to Libya and starts a new war, for what, I'm not sure, with people who we know fundamentally hate us, he goes to the UN, he goes to the Arab League, but he can't be bothered with going to Congress. I mean, what is that all about? It's about a person who, in my view, has a certain level of disdain for us and for our institutions. I have never heard him once mention the Founding Fathers. Now, maybe he has. The only thing I remember is his wife saying, this is the first time in my adult life I've been proud of my country. And having him saying, things like, we can't expect to lead the world anymore. We're a military superpower, whether we like it or not. Well, I like it. I mean, I like it. And I'd like for it to continue. The world's a better place when America is in power and America is in charge and America is leading. People have said to me, well, are you saying that you are in favor of the Libyan incursion? I say, no, I'm not. I think we've got enough on our plate right now. I don't think we need that. However, if you're gonna go, man up and go and fight and get this thing out of the way. Don't play around with it. So folks, I love our country. Look, I was raised as a foster kid for the first 10 years of my life in Chester, Pennsylvania. And I can remember having soup, biscuits and syrup for dinner and eating mayonnaise sandwiches. I lived in a shotgun house that didn't have a bathroom with running water in it. We all took baths on Saturday night in a galvanized tub, and since I was the youngest, I got it last. And boy, that tub did not look good. But I remember that, and I remember as a kid, and you may doubt this, but certain things that you go through your head as a child or happen to you as a child just make an indelible mark. And I remember as a kid looking at a little black and white TV, thinking to myself, seeing pictures of other parts of America and other things, thinking, there's got to be a better life. There's got to be a better life. And I came to realize in America, there's always a better life. There's always something better available. And I was able to grow up in very poor circumstances. I joined the United States Marine Corps at the age of 18 years old. They were drafting, but I volunteered to join. Took an oath to serve my country, and I served my country for 3 years and got out and went back to school and graduated from the University of Massachusetts and went on to Harvard Law School, studied at Harvard Divinity School. I didn't finish, by the way, Harvard Divinity School. I couldn't take it, folks. I couldn't take it. Right. And now, here I am, a candidate for the United States Senate. See, this is why I love my country. Only in America can a little kid in a foster home dream of a better life and then have that life come to pass, have it be realized. Not because the government did something for you, but because you did something for yourself. And that same opportunity is available to every American, and that's what I want to restore. This notion that you can do anything you want in this great country of ours if you are willing to get up off your backside and work hard and believe in yourself. And will there be opposition? Of course there will. Will you have hardship? Of course you will. But George Washington is my favorite president. I just love George Washington. Something about him that captures my imagination. If you ever come to my house, you'll see that I've got a bust of George Washington at one end of our mantle over our fireplace and a bust of Thomas Jefferson on the other. George Washington is my favorite, but he's my favorite because he was not a man who thirsted for power or fame or fortune, and he loved his country. I remember when he was informed that he had been elected president, He said, I'm paraphrasing, of course, he said, but I have great trepidation, I have great misgivings. He said, but I have to answer to the call to serve my country. When George Washington fought in the Revolutionary War, everything was against him. But he fought on anyway. And I hear that spirit in America saying, look, fight on even when the numbers are against you. Fight on even when you feel like you've lost significant battles already, and he has. Fight on because freedom is worth fighting for. Fight on because losing is not an option. Fight on because we have a vision for this great nation. A vision that is not yet fulfilled because, primarily, I think, because of the opposition to that vision. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we've got to do that, folks, because the posterity that is coming behind us will look at us and judge us one day. And I think they will see this moment in history in more stark terms even than we do. And I think that they will say this was a moment of great danger for the United States of America. But we want them to look back and say, but you know what? They met the challenge. They withstood the test. The flag still flies. Freedom prevails. America is still a shining city on a hill, and is still the last best hope on earth.
Amen.
Thank you very much.